I'm very happy to give me the opportunity to participate and present my work in this conference. Donc, I am Bernachid Khalid. Donc, my presentation is titled Effects of Pinus halepensis Reforestation on Plant Biomass and Native Species in the Forests of Beni Sohane in the Zloul Valley in Morocco. I will begin first by introduction, then materials and method, and I will present the main results after discussion, and finally conclusion. As we know, the importance role that plays the ecosystem forest. For example, we can cite the ecological roles like carbon sink, limits soil erosion and biodiversity, and its socio-economical roles like ecosystem services, forest products, and other services. Regarding according FAO, about 20,000 kilometer square of forest are destroyed each year. So about 1 billion trees planted each year are planted each year. However, the positive impact remain of this reforestation remain and depend of the plant cover and tree spaces reforested. In our region, Mediterranean region, since the 20th century, about a large area of reforestation are planted by Pinus halepensis, and this species is the main reforested resinous species in our country, and this because of its plasticity and yield and economic importance. The forest Beni Sohane has undergone severe degradation due to the anthropogenic pressure. So this led the forestry and water services to reforest a large area by this Pinus halepensis. So this carried out of three waves. The first waves began since 1970s. It's about around 44 years old. And the second wave of reforestation about 20 years old. And the last one, the reforestation has occurred in this century, and the age of the reforestation is about 12 years old. So the objectives of our studies is to study the impact of the Pinus halepensis reforestation first on the above ground biomass, on the herbaceous strata, and the impact of on the morphological leaves and internodes of four native species: Cystis criticus, Pistacia lentiscus, Filaria angustifolia, and Quercus ilex. So our study area is located in the northern Middle Atlas in Morocco. And the observation was carried out on the plant biomass of the herbaceous layer in reforested plots of 20 years old and 24 years old and 44 years old, and compared with the native forest control. And the repetition, and we've repeated the observation for about 10 times. The dry matter has been determined after drying the constant weight in an oven at 60 degrees Celsius. And the above ground plant material on the ground has been cut using the semi-destructive method on randomly selected 2 square meter plots. The harvest of the plant's biomass has been carried out during May, which corresponds to the fall development of the herbaceous layer. And we've measured the internal length and the leaves dimension, length and width were measured at height of between 1 and 2 meters with 40 repetition. These measures were realized on plants randomly selected belonging to 4 native species: Quercus ilex, Pistacia lentiscus, Filaria angustifolia, and Cystis criticus. For the statistic treatment, we've used the compared the mean comparison, or the mean comparison were performed by the study tests when normally and homoscedasticity was satisfied. And when this condition is not satisfied, we've used the non-parametric Mann-Whitney test. And the statistical treatment were carried out with the SPSS statistic 2022. The main results, as we see, for compared control and the young plantation, there is small differences between this plantation, but the difference increase for the old plantation. The last figure show the effect of Pinus halepensis Reforestation on the internode length. As we see, the differences is more accentuated, especially for Filaria angustifolia. But likewise, for control and young plantation, there is no important differences. But for the old plantation, reforestation, the difference increase. The next slide. The effects of this reforestation on length leaves shows also that there is no differences between the control and the young plantation, but the differences and the length increase for the old plantation, but this increase is not more accentuated like compared with the leaves. The next one. As we see, the effects of Pinus halepensis Reforestation is more accentuated compared if we compare control and the old plantation, especially for Quercus ilex. And there is for the ratio between leaves width and length, there is the leaves began more wider than long. As we see, this ratio is decreased with the age. So the leaves began more wider. The next one. The statistical treatment showed that only for the old reforestation, we have a significant difference. Uh, but for the two reforestation, we have not no difference, although the difference in the figures. The next one, as we see, this table showed that for the young plantation, there were no significant difference between control and reforestation plantation of Pinus halepensis, as we see in the first cells. But the difference is significant difference between control and the old plantation for the four species, except for the Pistacia lentiscis. As we see in the table, please return. As we see for the Pistacia lentiscis, for the middle reforestation R2, we have not a difference significant for the ratio between length and width. The next one. The photos showed the impacts of the canopy of reforestation plantation of Pinus halepensis on the native spaces, as we see the elongation of internodes of Filaria augustifolia for the photo number 5 and the photo number 6. Please return. And we see in the photo number 8 the elongation of the internodes of Cystis criticus. And the photo number 7, we see the impact of leaves that form a litter on the herbaceous layer. As we see, this litter form a physical barrier to germination, for example, and we can explain the changes in the dimension of internodes and leaf can be explained by the impact of the lack of light or competition for lights. And as we know, the Pinus halepensis is characterized by a resistance of water stress, a great adaptation to different type of soil, and a rapid growth compared with the other species or native species. And as we found that a regression of the herbaceous layer can be explained by a competition for water and nutrients and lights. And we can add also the allelopathic effects that can be that result of secretion of terpenes and phenols that enable the formation, the germination and the development of the species and the layer strata. As conclusion, the impact of Pinus halepensis reforestation has a negative effect on above ground biomass, which is exacerbated by the age of planting. Second, the raising of Pinus halepensis trees will form a canopy above the indigenous species, leads to change in the dimension of internodes and leaves, especially for the old plantation. So we can recommend that it seems that the thinning of young plantation would necessarily regulate their density and mitigate the negative impacts of Pinus reforestation. And we can see that a gradual conversion of plantation for the oldest reforestation can be used and be benefits for the Beni Sohane ecosystem balance. And so any reforestation of mountain habits requires a detailed understanding of its impact on ecosystem balance consequently, it would be more fitting to prioritize native forest spaces over expansionist exotic spaces. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khalid, for your insightful presentations. Now we want to go into the questions. We have some questions for you. The first one is from Joan Armstrong. He's asking, what made you want to study the impact of reforestation? What is the
What's
motivation? What made you want to study the impact of reforestation?
I don't and listen more. What? Can you repeat, please?
Okay, so Joan is asking, what made you want to study, or what made you study the impact of reforestation? So he's asking for the motivation behind your study.
Because we have found in the past studies that Pinus halepensis reforestation has had an effect on biodiversity and had negative effects on the fertility of soils, and the great area was abandoned by the pastors. So we have compared the impact of reforestation on the plant biomass and the the impacts on the leaves, dimension, and other and internals.
Okay,
Ah,
thank you
yes,
very
okay.
much.
What's
So the next question is, what roles can biomass play in this dispensation of global fund paucity?
I don't understand of the dispensation of global. What's it mean? Paucity.
So
What's all?
is basically the okay. So the question is, what role can biomass play in this dispensation of global fund paucity? So they want to know, the person who asked the question wants to know what is the role of biomass, especially in this age where there are limited global funds for biomass.
Because I think that the population lives since many centuries in the region on this biomass production. They have but how can I say, they have the leaves on the like a pasture. So the reforestation, because the objective first was to restore the ecosystem degraded by the anthropogenic pressure, and the effect was opposite, because this plantation, as we know that the growth of the Pinus halepensis has a great growth. So they formed the canopy that's don't let the normal growth of the other species for all native species. So many area was abandoned with this with population, and it has a negative impact, because Pinus halepensis is not a native species in the region. It exists in the other ecosystem in Morocco, but in the Zloul Valley, in the Beni Sohane forest, it's it can be considered as an exotic species.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. And the final question here is that from your study, we conclude that the Pinus halepensis has a negative effect on native species. So we want you to elaborate more on your recommendations.
As I said that we can act by thinning and regulate the density. That mean the density of the trees of Pinus halepensis compared with the other, and in order to let the other spaces to to grow, and to look for a balance between the exotic species and the native spaces, and we can use the the trees, the old plantation, or for the old trees, for we can't explore this wood for population, or for association, or other, and to search or look for this balance between this exotic space and the other native spaces. Yes, is there any other question?
Yes, I think that will be all. Thank you very much, Mr. Khalid, for your answers and for the wonderful presentation. And
Thank you
congratulations.
for you. Thank you for your attention.